Hey folks, this is the second video in a series I'm doing about how to interpret a birth chart. The ways you can start interpreting it on the most basic level. And so the last video was just an introduction. I talked about this chart a tiny bit. It's a transit chart, and I'm just going to get right to it. But before I do that, please hit like, hit subscribe, and definitely make a note to check out my website for individualized readings and more after this. Also find me on Facebook, Heavenly Branches, Astrology and Tarot, or Lars. Okay, cool. So I'm going to mainly utilize whole sign houses. Right now, I don't have it set up to show just whole sign houses. I have it set up to show a quadrant-based house system, but I am mainly going to use whole sign. So just for a moment, I am going to switch to whole sign. Just give me a moment here, because I don't want you guys to get confused about how I'm interpreting this stuff. And then at a certain point, might switch back to quadrants. Okay, cool. So we have Pisces rising. Okay, so the first thing we always want to do, the first thing generally that we want to do is look at the rising sign, right? Again, there's no one size fits all for interpretation or where to start with interpretation. But generally speaking, we could be pretty safe to look at the rising sign, right? The rising sign is going to show something about the person's body, vitality, the way they look, kind of their projection in life, like where they're headed or how they approach things. It also deals with like skill, inborn skill and talent and wit. Wit meaning like the kind of the qualities of the mind. So we can actually compare the ascendant to Mercury for qualities of the mind, but we won't be doing that right now. Instead, what we'll be doing is we want to basically just examine the planet in the ascendant or any planets in the ascendant, and of course the location of the ascendant lord. In this case, Jupiter is the ascendant lord, and Jupiter is residing in Sagittarius, which is the whole sign 10th house, right? So immediately that gives us something to process about the person. We know that they're going to be involved in 10th house affairs in a big way. That's going to be a big theme of their life. And so the 10th house makes a person, determined towards industrious, hardworking phenomenon, responsibility, trying to rise high in life and being very focused on their career. Since the planet is Jupiter, and Jupiter's in his own sign, which makes him powerful, and he's in his own bound. The bounds are these fivefold unequal divisions. And for those of you who don't know, when a planet's in its own bound, it's basically just strengthened as though it were in its own sign. So it's actually quite powerful for it to be there. So we know that Jupiter is strong, right? We also see that this is a day chart and that Jupiter has just finished being combust or under the sun's rays, right? So Jupiter is extremely empowered by all of these things, right? He's in a good position relative to the sun. He's in his own sign, he's in his own bound, and he's in a relatively positive house, you could say. The angular houses show something about the actions of the person, and they're strong. They're not necessarily good or bad, or I should say they're not necessarily challenging or easy, but they're just very powerful. I like to compare them to a green light. Like when you're driving and you have the green light, you can just go as long as there's nobody else obstructing you in traffic, right? You can just go through that green light. So generally speaking, the angular houses are like that, although we do find that Jupiter's receding from the angle. See where the midheaven is? That's the most powerful point. Jupiter's actually cadent from it, although it's, let's see, what's the degree here? Jupiter's definitely more than 15 degrees. 15 degrees is kind of the empowered zone. So Jupiter is actually cadent here. So even though he's in the 10th house, he's going to be a little bit weakened. But it's okay because overall he's in very good condition. So we can say that this person's chart on just a mundane level is setting the stage for really great and good fortune in matters of career and their sort of kingdom, right? And that basically it's probably going to be won through a certain level of hard work, because Jupiter is cadent. So that makes the person have to work a bit harder for that. But generally, this is a chart where they're going to be able to accomplish a lot in what they set out to do, and they're going to be relatively healthy as well, because again, that ascendant lord's in good condition. But what about Mars, right? We forgot to talk about Mars. Well, no, we didn't forget. I just can only do one thing at a time while I'm explaining it. So Mars is in the first house. So Mars is going to have a certain effect on this person's life and talent and wit and sort of the general direction they go in life, right? Mars is going to have quite a lot to say about them, even though, Jupiter is kind of our main significator for the person. So this is where we want to think about what Mars represents, but we also want to look at what houses he rules. And later on, I'll talk about, too, what lots he may rule as well. Like, for instance, right now, he rules the lot of spirit, which is that little upside-down arrow, okay? And that's at 21 Scorpio or so. So he rules that, okay? And, right now we don't have any more lots in here, and that's okay. We don't want to make things too confusing. But so not only does he rule the ninth house, he rules the lot of spirit. And then he also rules the second house. Okay, cool. So basically what's happening is that Mars themes are marking the person's passage through life in a major way. And so are second house, ninth house, and lot of spirit things as well. Okay, so putting that together is going to be the subject of perhaps the next video and maybe the one after it as well. But this is a great place to start, the Ascendant and the Ascendant Lord, and you start to see how the themes come together by looking at the rulerships, right? Now, if Jupiter had ruled another sign other than Sagittarius or Pisces, right, then we would bring that into the mix as well. But we can already bring in Mercury's rulership because they are closely conjunct, and Mercury at 5 degrees Sagittarius is applying to Jupiter. So this is quite a strong conjunction, basically, and it's fairly auspicious in my opinion. And so Mercury rules the 7th and the 4th houses, right? And it's also a lord of the angles. So we have both lords of the angles, which signify actions and activity, and also have a lot to do with thoughts too, and mastery and things like that, conjoining in Jupiter's sign with what we call reception, right? That means Jupiter is receiving Mercury into his dignities. So that's very, very good. That's very powerful conjunction. So we bring Mercury's significations to bear as well on the life of the person. Okay, so that'll be enough for this video. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and please share this video, and also check out my website once again. All right, so stay tuned for the next video.